As a creative aspect, TV is one of the best things that we do as a species. Along with music and film and books, they bring out the best creative of all of us. They entertain and they bring so much joy to many. They invoke emotion and enable us to feel things that we bury sometimes deep down. That's what this podcast is for. Welcome to A Million Little TV Shows. This is what I call the breakdown while I break down. Each week I will go through a different TV show, a different season of that TV show, and different episodes of that show. And I will break down not only emotions, but I will break down stories from my life, and let you know why these TV shows mean so much to me, and why I believe that they are some of the most important shows out there. This podcast is here to highlight a lot of smaller TV shows, or TV shows that don't really get a platform, because we know of a bunch of TV shows that get a multitude of different podcasts. Ted Lasso, Game of Thrones, The Office, they've all got several podcasts out there analysing all types of different things. But there's not many out there for the little guy, and that's what I'm trying to highlight. So each week I will go through a different show, different seasons, different episodes, and I will go across all different kinds of genres and different countries to bring you what I believe is some of the best TV out there. So I'm glad you're here with me. I'm glad you're here for this journey. And if you've watched the shows before and you wanted to come here and get an analysis on them and have someone go through them and pick out bits that you might have enjoyed, then I'm glad you are here. If, however, you have never watched the show and you just want to come and have someone talk in your ear about different TV shows, I'm glad you are here. But I hope that it inspires some people to go and seek out these TV shows. They deserve to be watched. They were made with love and care, and they are the same as this podcast, made with love and care. I am your host, Mike, and I will take you through every adventure, every horror, every piece of drama, and I hope that you enjoy the show. Hello there, and welcome back to this A Million Little TV Shows podcast. This is now episode 12 of season 10, and today we're going to be going back into the world of the sassy arsehole Loudermilk. This is going to be finishing off season 2 of this excellently funny show, and I just cannot wait to get back into these characters, to this show, to this world that he is inhabiting, and just enjoy how far this man is coming along when it comes to his actual journey. Now, he still is very aggressive to anything that he doesn't really understand, and is still an arsehole to people that he just cannot tolerate, but I've been in that headspace. I know what that's like, and I think we all kind of have something about us that will be able to sympathise with this character. Not everything in the world can be easily digestible, especially in the current world that we live in. It is pretty much you are opposed to or for something. You can't have any nuance these days, and that seems to be the way that Loudermilk is. He doesn't see things as a grey area, he sees things as black and white until you actually look into his proper journey. And I think that's what makes him such a fascinating character, that he is bitter towards the world, but also he is trying to make his place in it and trying to be a good person while also not really understanding the world. He also has this air that he is better than everyone else. And we obviously know that he is flawed. He is a counsellor for a drugs and alcohol program, and he is a former alcoholic who has fallen off the wagon in this season. So we know that he's got a lot of shit and a lot of baggage, and he's just trying to deal with life and where he slots into the world. As much as he tries to show that he isn't bothered by it, he truly is. So I think we should just get into it. This is Loudermilk, Season 2, Episodes 8-10, the finale. Episode 8, Iron Man. And so, we know that Loudermilk's a dickhead, and generally he is a dickhead at the beginning of the episodes just to show how much of a dickhead he is. And we see it once again here, even though when he is sat in a shoe shop with Claire and he is trying to help her out, he can't help himself. He is basically being a dick to Claire, saying that he didn't know that she was going shoe shopping and that why should he be here. However, Claire always gives it him back. So she tells him, look, maybe you could do something about your look. He's got this very grungy 90s look. Like if he was in the 90s, you'd be kind of going, well, you know, it's the 90s. But he looks like Kurt Cobain if Kurt Cobain had aged and had black hair And it's just kind of, it's a look of a time. And from a man who is trying to get his life on track, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but it's not something I'd wear. However, I wear fucking logo t-shirts all the time with Batman symbols on, so I can't really speak. I'm a 40-year-old man who is probably going through the same shit that Loudermilk is going through. But especially living in somewhere like Seattle, it seems like he's got this, I don't know, just this blindness to anything that's not the 90s, and he has stayed on this grunge scene for the last God knows how long. So Claire says maybe you need to freshen up your look a little bit. She also tells him that he's got a little bit of a paunch, and I can't actually remember, I think she may have stated it, and he really pointed it out that he has got a little bit tubby over the time. But while he's sat in the shoe shop, another woman comes in and she sits, and he starts flirting with her a little bit. They seem to get along, but while he is talking about her child runs over and jumps into his mother's lap. It's at this point that she's already stated that the child is 50 months, which is 4 years, and she then whips up her top and starts feeding her child from her breast. Now, look, I'm not judging anyone on unparented style, because I don't have kids, so, it's not for me to judge, but that does seem a little weird. At 4, the child is still breastfeeding, but hey-ho, it is what it is. However, Loudermilk doesn't mind pointing this out, that it is a little weird, and that they didn't know that was going to happen while it was sat in this shoe shop. And then, of course, Claire sees it as well, and she's a little bit freaked out by it because, again, it's not a thing that you would normally see, a 4-year-old in its mother's lap in that way. But, of course, Loudermilk just cannot help himself. I thought he was going to go crazy over the 50 months comment because she said that he was 50 months. And I thought that's going to be it. That's going to be the point where he loses it. And he didn't. He kept his calm, kept his cool, kept his head about it. As soon as she started breastfeeding, he was like, whoa, what the fuck's going on? And so basically talks her down and talks her out of this store because he's just been a dick. But because of the comment that Claire made about him getting a little tubby, Loudermilk has started to feel it. He started to notice it on himself, and he decides to start doing some exercise. Of course, he goes into it whole hog instead of actually doing it properly and, actually warming up beforehand. So instantly he tweaks his back. It's the classic comedy trope that as soon as someone says they're going to do something like exercise, they end up injuring themselves. And that's what's happened here. He's ended up hurt, and throughout the episode, we keep seeing him just basically, at least for the first 10 minutes of the episode, on the floor. Whenever he's going anywhere, whenever he's doing anything in the flat, he's literally crawling around. He ends up going to group, and another woman actually joins the group, a woman named Brooke. She's got businesses all over the country, and she is an alcoholic. She shares a little bit about her story, and she tells them that she is someone who does Reiki and massage and all that kind of stuff. Of course, it's all stuff that Loudermilk would not believe in. He thinks he can just tough this out and hopefully his back will fix itself. The typical male fucking problem. There's a solution and you could take it, or you can just struggle on your own. I don't get it, but I suppose there's been times when I've been there. However, I've done quite a lot of work on myself and, gone to therapy and spoke to people about it and tried to understand both sides of the argument. And where I said at the beginning, I don't see Loudermilk as seeing grey areas. I do. I see grey areas everywhere. That's my problem sometimes. I see too many grey areas about who's going to get offended and who's going to get hurt by the things that I do or say. But I always try and see both sides of an argument. However, like I said, in this very weird world we live in right now, if you have a grey opinion, you end up being lost in the shuffle because no one wants to really hear it. They only want to hear what they believe or what certain politicians or certain people are telling them. And of course, as soon as you try and prove anything to these people, they'll bite your head off. Anyway, back to this session. So after the session, Loudermilk starts packing things away and he picks up a chair. As he does, his back goes again and he is crippled, basically. Brooke comes over to him and tries to treat him and tries to help him out just to see what the problem is, but he's not having any of it and he ends up leaving. During this session, however, Claire gets spoken to by Father Michael. He essentially tells her he needs to see her in his office, and when she goes through, her mother is there. Her mother tells her that she is going to be selling a house that they lived in for years, and that she wants Claire to come over and pick some stuff up from her father's office, because Claire was always the doting one on her father and loved her father to bits, and blamed her mother for the marriage breakup and also his suicide, which ended up spiraling Claire into this world of sex, drugs, drink, whatever it was. Claire eventually agrees to go over to the house and pick up this stuff because she just wants to get out of the situation with her mother. She doesn't want to see her mother anymore, and she just seems very angry with her. It seemed that her dad was always someone who would support her through anything, and when she actually thinks about how to better herself, she's been trying to better herself throughout these episodes, she starts looking at going to university to do an arts program. It seems that she is very good at the art that she does, and it seems that most of her drawings are actually of her and her dad. Claire ends up going over to see her mum and picks this stuff up. However, when she's there, her and her mother really get into it. Claire says, "I know what happened between you and one of our family friends. You went after him and you pursued him and you had an affair with this man. I saw you, I caught you, and it was your fault that my dad died." Her mother tells Claire to actually look in the desk that she is stood at, and she finds some emails from her father to another family friend. It turns out that actually her father was the one who was having the affair. When her mother found out, she was too Christian to actually leave him and wanted to try and make the marriage work for Claire. Claire didn't understand any of this at the time, and it seems now that the truth is out there. Her father wasn't the person that she actually idolised for all this time. And Claire begins to see that Loudermilk is maybe someone who is more of a father figure to her than her actual father was, because he was lying to her the whole time. Whereas Loudermilk, as much of an arsehole as he can be, has always tried to be honest with her and tried to be true with her. And so when he finds out that she's actually planning to go to university, he's really happy for her because he knows it's probably the best that she can do. Back to Loudermilk, however, when he actually ends up in a bad situation with his back, like he's literally crawling around the floor of his apartment and absolutely needs to go and see someone, he decides to give Brooke a call. He ends up going into her office and she fixes him because that's what they do. They're really good at what they do. There's a reason they do what they do. And if you find a really good masseuse or a really good alternative healer, it can do you wonders. However, it seems that Loudermilk may have found more than he actually wanted when it comes to Brooke, because they seem to have a moment. There is a moment just after he's had his session where he sits up and they're just kind of looking at each other. Even when they actually go back to have a session with the group, Claire notices that there's something between them, and also when they're sat in a group, Brooke actually sits next to Loudermilk, which is usually a spot that's reserved for Claire. Now, not always, but generally Claire is sat next to Loudermilk. And so maybe now Loudermilk has a new relationship on the horizon. Claire might be going off to uni as well. So new things are coming as the season is about to end. So let's find out what more's coming. Episode 9, Saturday night's alright for fighting. So while he's on his way to his group one day, Loudermilk gets a call from his father and ignores it. Moments later, he is accosted by two people who actually ask him about the group that he runs. It would seem that everyone congregates outside the church rectory before they go in. They're all waiting for Loudermilk. These people say that they're new to the area and that they are a little bit worried about how things look when these people are stood outside this rectory. Essentially, they are asking Loudermilk to have them keep it down and not cause too much ruckus or litter. Basically, they want the area to remain respectful, which is understandable. However, Loudermilk points out that these guys have been here longer, and therefore, technically, it is their area. He's not saying that he's not willing to compromise, but it does seem that these people are just trying to keep up appearances and are willing to pick a fight with people in the area that they don't actually feel fit that area. It's a little bit kind of gentrification type of situation where they don't want certain individuals in their area because they want to keep it respectful so that their house value goes up. However, they've just moved to the area, so what does it fucking matter? But anyway, Loudermilk essentially in his own inevitable way tells these people to fuck off. And they get offended and pissy about it and start a petition online to have the group and Loudermilk removed from the rectory, which of course Father Mike is more than happy to listen to, because just the way he is really. Once they get in the meeting, the new guy talks about how things with him and his new girlfriend are going. He says that everything's going okay apart from the fact that her ex-boyfriend keeps turning up, and the new guy feels a little bit threatened by him. At the end of the meeting, we see why he's so threatened by him, because when this guy turns up, although he suffers with dwarfism as well, he isn't afraid to use his voice, and also isn't afraid to get violent, whereas the new guy tends to shy away from anything like that and hide behind others. Tony, however, the guy who got them all into gambling, actually turns around and says, look, if you want to pick a fight with someone, I'm happy to fight you. After getting punched in the dick as well, they end up accepting this fight. They're just about to throw down in the car park, but Father Michael comes out and says, look, not around here, not right now. I'm going to set up a boxing ring. You can come back later. We'll have it out. And he starts advertising this match around town because he's a bit of a grifter, is Father Michael. Loudermilk, however, is just annoyed at the fact that these new people to town have started filming this actual altercation, and they start posting online about it. Like I say, they're trying to get them kicked out of the rectory. Claire thinks she's big and clever when she actually sees some of the comments and decides to fight back a little bit. However, she's not as big and as clever as she thought, because when she actually starts picking on these people and saying basically go fuck yourselves and what have you, they come back with some horrific stuff and basically blow Claire out of the water. She thought she was an internet troll, and it turns out that she is not at all, and these people just annihilate her. But it seems like the advertisements outside the church, as well as this online battle that's been going on, have actually brought people to this fight. And so the night of the fight, they're all getting ready to actually go for it. Muggsy is in Tony's corner and trying to G him up, but Tony's like, I don't want to do this. This is stupid. I'm fighting a guy who's like only up to my knee. This is ridiculous. The other guy, however, is in a similar situation. He's like, I don't know why I shoot my mouth off. I don't want to fight this guy. He's taller than me, and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get out of this. They both get in the ring, and due to some bad advice from Muggsy, Tony actually starts bending over as if to sort of lessen his height, and this obviously offends a lot of people, including the guy that he's boxing. The guy kicks the royal shit out of him, and when everyone starts to get into the ring to have a big schmoz about it because it ends up in a DQ, the whole thing ends up spilling out into the street. By this point, Loudermilk's given up. He walks out and he walks away from the actual fighting. Earlier on in the day, Loudermilk had actually been to see this couple who have moved to the area and said, look, these people need this area. They need this outlet because it is good for them. Like, they don't get a lot in their life, and okay, they're a little bit messy, they're a little bit loud, but they're trying to help themselves. Not everyone is as privileged as others, and they are just trying to build a community and build something for each other. And it's here that we see that the couple actually turn up just as this fight's ending and come and speak to Loudermilk. They ask him for forgiveness, and they say, look, we're not those people really. We moved to this area and we spoke out of turn. We shouldn't have done, and it's on us really. Obviously, we want people to get better, and we want people to be able to work together as a community. And we understand that we stepped out of line and that we shouldn't have done. And they offer Loudermilk a gift. He gladly accepts it, and they seem to be able to bury the hatchet. Just then, however, everyone starts spilling out into the street because there's a massive riot going on after this fight, and the couple actually realise that maybe they've done the wrong thing apologising, because this seems to be getting out of hand now. Before it was just loud talking and cigarette butts everywhere, but now they're actually physically fighting in the streets. And so they walk away from the situation before Loudermilk can actually explain. The other thing that Loudermilk would have had to explain was what happened to Ben. Now, this show gets more and more ridiculous as I watch it, and this was an incredible storyline. So Ed, the guy who was actually hiding when it came to the millennium, has done quite well for himself over the last few years and has ended up getting a fairly decent apartment in town. However, he asks if someone will come over and look after his dog for a couple of days because he's going out of town. Ben volunteers because he's been kicked out of his room because Claire's now living in there. So he just wants a proper bed to sleep in and a place to go. Ed says that's fine, and he takes him to his apartment and says, look, everything else is fine, just don't go behind that door. Of course, as soon as anyone says don't go behind that door, you've got to find out what's behind the door, and Ben does just that. He finds a sex doll behind there, and he starts to think about it and look at it, and he's going, I don't understand how anyone could do anything like that. It's weird, it's strange, it's like each to their own, but it's, a little bit odd. Eventually, he starts to think about maybe why it could be a good thing, and then ends up sleeping with the doll, because of course he does. After the first time, he realises how good it is and does it again and again. Ben is an addict. I've said it before a few times in this show that when new things come along and these people get addicted to it, it's just a stopgap for them for the other things that were going on in their life. And Ben gets addicted to sleeping with this doll. He calls Loudermilk for help, and Loudermilk's like, fuck's sake, Ben, what are you doing? Ben says, I can't quit her, and Loudermilk has to clean up his mess. And so when Ed gets back from his visit outside of town, he finds his sex doll, or his girlfriend in this case, has been sullied by Ben, and obviously goes off to confront him. He confronts him right in front of the couple that I was talking about before as well, who are trying to apologise to Loudermilk. And Loudermilk is just kind of like throwing his hands up in the air like, I don't know what the fuck to do. Like, this is so fucking ridiculous. And so once again, the group have ended up disgracing Loudermilk as he has tried to help them as best possible. The next day we see Loudermilk actually talking with the group outside, and he's trying to just rein them in again after the previous night. He gets another phone call from his dad, and he steps away from them and takes the inevitable phone call. It's one that we're going to all end up having one day, and I've had it. It's a strange phone call to take. But Loudermilk is told by the person on the end of the phone that his dad has died. Of course, we know that Loudermilk now has a younger brother. We know that Loudermilk now also has his younger brother's mother in his life. And so we have to find out what's going on with them now as well. And we've got to wrap it all up before the end of the season. So let's do that. And finally for season 2, episode 10, Don't Go Away Mad, Just Go Away. And so we see the start of Loudermilk's addiction to alcohol. His dad, many years earlier, had actually introduced him to alcohol. And that's how it all kind of started. He found out that Loudermilk was smoking weed and told him that we don't do that kind of thing in this house. If you want to deal with your problems, you drink this, and hands him a bottle of booze, or a flask of booze. So, thanks to his dad, he ended up in the situation that he was in. I suppose you could say that thanks to his dad, he ended up in the situation he was in, and is now the person who he is, helping people, looking after people, and generally caring about people, even if, as I've said throughout this episode, and talking about this show, he's an arsehole. But one thing we learn about him is that he really does care about the people that he hangs around with, and the people that are in his group. Because when Claire comes to talk to him about leaving, because she's been living with him for over a year now, she feels that it's time for her to move on. It's not fair on Loudermilk. It's certainly not fair on Ben, because it was his home originally. And so she says, look, I need to start looking at a place to leave. I need to go to university and do what I need to do there. I just need to start thinking about the next chapter of my life. Loudermilk doesn't really want to let go by the looks of things, and essentially tells her, look, you can't do this on your own. It's not a good place for you to be out there in the world right now when you haven't really got a grasp on what you're doing. Especially being in a band, and, you know, if you end up touring or whatever, it could end up being a bad thing for you. Loudermilk also has to arrange his father's funeral. And while doing so, he speaks to Father Michael about it, and at first he thinks that Father Michael is going to do this for gratis, like no money whatsoever. And of course, when the father tells him, look, you're going to have to pay me for this, and it's going to cost X amount, Loudermilk's a little bit taken aback by it. He thought that he and the father were friends by this point. But of course he sees that the funeral business is just that. It's a business after all. And so he has to just kind of take it on the chin. When they have the funeral, a lot of people turn up, including Annette, who is Loudermilk's brother Clyde's mother. There are several others that used to sleep with his dad as well and try to explain how good he was around the human body, but Loudermilk doesn't want to hear it, as nobody would. Nobody needs to hear that shit. But when Annette turns up, she is upset for Loudermilk more than anything. But as we know from the previous episode that she was in, she is struggling to look after her son. And it turns out that she has 2 other kids as well. So it's not been an easy thing for her, looking after a newborn with her 2 kids. But she knows that Loudermilk is there for her if she needs him, because he keeps reiterating that he's happy to help. One person who didn't want to turn up at the funeral was Claire, because the last time she was actually in that church is when her father died, and it would have taken too much out of her to actually go. But of course, she knows how much Loudermilk cares for her, and is a little taken aback when he actually says that he didn't expect her to go to the funeral. And so when she turns up, he starts to talk about the people that he has around him. Good people that care for him, that love him, and would turn up on the day that is hardest for him. And that he knows that he's got good people around him, even if they don't always like each other. He knows that Claire needs to move out, and he knows that she was right about what she said, but he knows that he has to let go at some point. Right now, he just doesn't want to. He doesn't want to face that fact. Claire has been an integral part of his journey so far, and he wants that to continue. I suppose for Loudermilk it's like having a younger sister. There's never been any attraction to her, and they've always been at odds, but they do have a nice dynamic between the two of them. And so he understands why she has to go. He and Ben also get into it about what happened between him and Memphis. He tells him that Memphis found someone else, that she was in love with someone else, and that he just couldn't compete. Loudermilk felt like he knew exactly what Ben was talking about. She loved the booze more than him, and that she wasn't going to change for anybody, and that really hurt him. However, when Ben tells Loudermilk that she's been sober for 8 months, and the person that she left him for was actually Loudermilk's going to have to start rethinking what is going to be happening with him and Memphis going forward, because it turns out that the woman that he's pined for all this time is in love with him and is now starting to make amends and do things to actually help her situation so that she can become a better person for him. And so now, with Ben being back in the flat and Loudermilk happily taking him on, Claire moves out, and they all have this big moment where you feel like Claire is leaving, and it's one of those end of series things where you feel like the main character is leaving and you're not sure if they're going to come back for another season or how they're going to integrate that person into the next season. And it's a little bit sad until you realise where Claire's actually going, because they go out into the hall, they watch Claire walk down it, and then she stops at the second room and walks in. She hadn't told Loudermilk and Ben where she was actually moving, and she's literally moving down the hall. So we know that Claire's going to be back in season 3. Obviously, Loudermilk and Ben are going to be back in season 3. Potentially Memphis at some point. But another character we didn't really expect to be back in season 3 is going to be Clyde, Loudermilk's younger brother. Because right at the end of the episode, Annette turns up and she tells Loudermilk she just can't do this anymore. She hands her son, Loudermilk's brother, to him and runs. She says she's sorry, but she just can't do it. And so next season, we're going to have to find out how Loudermilk deals with looking after a baby, as well as trying to look after himself. Potentially Memphis coming back. And we need to know what's going to be happening with Ben, the group, and Claire. Okay, so let's have a quick chat about how this season ended. Now, I love this show. I think it's really funny. I'm worried for next season with the fact that there's been a baby involved, but I think they'll pull it off really well. I just think that when they bring a character like that in, it's just a strain on the actual show and the writing. I think it obviously just ends up bringing in another element that he now has to think about, which is fine, but he's very self-involved. I know this is about evolving himself and making sure that he not only looks at the world around him, but also considers it. However, sometimes I think throwing a baby into the mix makes things just go off the rails a little bit. But hey, they could prove me wrong. They could totally turn this around. They could make it a really interesting final season. And I hope that they do, because I think it's a great show. But it's nice to see the characters developing really well. Like I've said, Claire has now decided to go to university. She's moved on from this group, as in Ben and Loudermilk. And yes, okay, she's only moved down the hall, but it's a start for her. It means that if she wants a relationship, she can have one, because she doesn't have to keep thinking about Ben and Loudermilk being there. She can just enjoy her life now. And it's a great start for her to actually be able to move on. And hopefully now that she's found out more about what happened with her father, she can start to forgive her mother a little bit and treat her a little bit kinder. Because obviously it was her mother that ended up getting Loudermilk involved in the first place. So her mother is just trying to help. Her mother is just trying to do what's best for her daughter, and Claire doesn't seem to see it. So hopefully in the next season there is a lot more building bridges between those two. Ben obviously has been in love with Memphis. He married the woman for God's sake, and he said basically in the last episode that he would have died for her. But all the time she was in love with Loudermilk, and he has to now live with the person that his ex-wife loves. And yeah, they were together for a long time as well, Loudermilk and Memphis, but it must be very difficult for him to be back in that fold. But then again, it's also his best friend, and you've got to want your best friend to be happy at the end of the day. And it seems that Loudermilk is taken aback by the fact that his ex-wife still loves him. After all this time, he always thought that it was always going to be the booze that was the winner out of the two of them. But apparently now, she's 8 months sober and she is ready to get back with him. Loudermilk is now 9 months sober since his last drink when he was in New Orleans and he found out about what was going on between Ben and Memphis. So it's going to be interesting for the main cast next season going forward and what's going to happen for them. As I said at the end, I'm hoping that Memphis comes back because I thought she was a good character. I'm hoping that this baby ends up with some interesting storylines and it's not just going to totally focus around Loudermilk and the baby's relationship. I know that it should do, but I just find it a little bit jarring when I see that in TV because it's a trope that generally gets thrown out. Like, they get to a certain amount of seasons and they go, I'll just give them a baby, it'll be fine. And then there's the rest of the core group. Now, one thing I didn't mention was that Muggsy has actually been able to see his kids for the first time in a long time. And that happened at the end of the last episode. And it seems like he's actually done well while looking after them. So things are starting to get better for the people in and around the group. Obviously, we know that the new guy is dating. Although sometimes it seems like his girlfriend doesn't really like him that much. But he is dating. And we keep seeing people like Cisco, who has actually managed to find his place in the world as well, when he found out that he had a different heritage to the one that he thought he had. So the group dynamics are really interesting as well. And I cannot wait to explore this show again next season, which I am doing next season. And I will tell you more of the other shows that I'm doing next season shortly. But yeah, Loudermilk's great. It's very, very funny. And if you haven't watched it, I hope you have watched it because you've been going through this with me, but if you haven't, go and watch it. I think it's great. And I think it benefits from not having a laughter track. I find sometimes a laughter track can be very jarring, whereas this doesn't have one, so the deeper moments within it actually hit hard. There's no, crowd going, oh, or, laughing or feeling sorry for the character or whatever it is. It's something happens that's bad and there's a silence and you have to sit in it. And it's awkward, and it makes you think about times that you've had similar experiences to the characters and what they're going through. And I feel it just makes it a little bit more personal to you. And yeah, it's one of the reasons that I really like the show. Anywho, like I said, let's talk about what's coming next season. So, next season on A Million Little TV Shows podcast, we will be watching Kaleidoscope, which is a show that I haven't watched. It came out in 2023. I left it because I knew I was going to do it on the podcast, and I've pushed it back, and now I'm doing it. And since I've said it on here, I have to do it because this is going to be pre-recorded. So I'm going to be doing Kaleidoscope. It's a very interesting concept. I'm very excited about it. And yeah, I really want to explore this show. I think it's fascinating the way that they've done it. Then we're going to be finishing up Miracle Workers with season 4. And that is something that I have wanted to do for a while. Obviously, we're covering season 3 at the minute, so I want to get through that series as well. And then we're done with Miracle Workers. What I'm trying to do is make sure if I start a series, I don't have a massive break like I did with Miracle Workers. So I want to get that out of the way. So Miracle Workers is coming as well, season 4. Then something new called Dying for Sex. It was a mini-series on Netflix, and it blew me away when I saw it. It was really emotional, really fun, very funny to watch, and gives a very interesting take on the fact that the lead character is dying and all they want to do is have sex one last time. And it is them searching for this moment, searching for a way to enjoy their final days and hopefully get laid in the process. So it's funny, it's dark, it's deep, and yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. And then we've got Loudermilk season 3, which is going to be the final season of that. And we obviously know from what I've just been talking about where that's going. And then we have Mindhunter season 2. So again, like I promised, I'm going to try and finish seasons as I've started them. So yeah, we're going to be getting into Mindhunter, Loudermilk, and Miracle Workers for the final seasons. But I'm done for today. I am so pleased with the way this podcast is going, and I am absolutely thrilled that you guys come along with me for this journey. I hope you're all doing well out there, but as always, until next time, I will speak to you soon. Bye. As always, thank you for listening to this podcast, and you could really help me and the podcast by giving a like, share, subscribe on all major platforms that you listen to podcasts on. As an independent podcaster, this will just help me exponentially when it comes to actually doing more things with this podcast. I truly do enjoy this, and I absolutely love revisiting these TV shows with you guys. So any engagement from you is always welcome, and I will try and listen to all of you when you give suggestions or just tell me what you think about the podcast. But once again, thank you for listening, and until next time, I will speak to you soon. Bye.